I've always been interested in ideas, basically. They've always been the things that have the most excitement for me. And I was in therapy for a while, and I discovered that actually ideas have an almost erotic charge for me. They're not just abstract things. They actually have life. And so I've always followed those. And there's been a continuous path through my early days at school, my days in Oxford, the first book I wrote against criticism, through to The Master and His Emissary, and finally The Matter with Things. It's been a seamlessly evolving, organic process that is concerned with resonance, the resonance between what is me, my consciousness, and the world. It's also the very obvious point that when wholes are broken down into their parts, a good deal is lost. Apart from anything else, the relations between those parts. And over life, I've seen relations as more and more important, and I see them as primary. So I see relations as prior to relata that emerge from a web of relationships rather than the other way around. All these things I've been thinking about most of my life. The idea also that things don't move in nature in straight lines, that ideas and matters of the human spirit, if you like, also don't move in straight lines, but move with a more circular motion. But I've come to see that as a spiral motion, particularly latterly, which interestingly involves both a directedness and a circularity. So those are some of the things that have always been important to me. Another is the meaning of the unique, in that really everything is unique. We just approximately gather things together into groups for ease of thinking about them and dealing with them. But that individuality or uniqueness is always being eroded by the way in which we certainly now think. The importance of what is implicit over what is explicitly stated, that really all the important things can only be hinted at in language. Language is not exactly defeated by them, but language needs to rely on poetry rather than simply prose. So those are some of the themes that have been with me all my life and cohered eventually when I began to study the brain.
Now, you have a book which can also be described as a tome. Is it double the length of your previous book? So there's The Master and His Emissary for people who are unfamiliar.
Well, it is. It is actually, yes. And what's funny about that is that it started off as being the short version of The Master and His Emissary.
Yes. Again, for people who are unfamiliar, there's The Matter with Things that's on screen right now. Link is in the description. Just so you know, there's only two books that I recommend consistently on this channel. One is Gödel Escher Bach, and then the other is Master and His Emissary.
Wonderful.
I would like to know how your views have evolved from Master and His Emissary to The Matter with Things. And it would also be great to give an explanation as to the titles.
Yes. Well, the title is easy to gloss. It has three levels of meaning. One is the obvious one that there is, as we all agree, I think nowadays, there is something that is the matter with things, in that colloquial English expression, meaning there's something wrong. What is it? And I want to address what I believe that wrongness comes from and what it's like. The second is, I think there's something wrong with our preoccupation with matter, at least with the idea of matter as simple. And I always say that materialists are not people who overvalue matter, but people who undervalue matter, because matter is something very extraordinary. It's not just lumpen matter sitting there inertly. And so that's the second meaning. And the third is the problem with things. That I believe we see the world as made up of things, whereas I think that's a start from a very late stage of apprehension where certain aspects of reality stand out to us as the things that attract our attention and seem to us important, whereas I believe that reality is in fact a seamless whole, which is not to say that it's undifferentiated. It's vastly differentiated, but it's not really made up of bits. So those are the elements that go to make up the meaning of the title.
Okay, this undifferentiation, or this differentiation between what's undifferentiated and what's differentiated, I'd like you to explain more about that. And the reason behind this is that you had a great phrase. I believe it was something that the left brain, which we're going to talk about, and people will hear that and think about the pop sci version. They can remove that from their mind because you're going to dissuade them of that belief or disabuse them of that notion. But anyhow, the left mode of thinking is more interested in narrowing down to a certainty, and the right brain is more interested in opening up to a possibility. Now, I like that phrase. However, there are many people in the comment section of your videos, I'm sure on other people's videos, who then feel like they've been enlightened, they've gone to a monastery, or they've taken psychedelics, or they've done whatever practice over the course of months or years or what have you. And that sounds like a practice of opening oneself up. But then they become certain about their insight of oneness or of reality or whatever it may be. And you could see it with their definitive statements. So it sounds to me like they either are fooling themselves and they think they have a right brain view of the world, but it's right brain rhetoric with a left brain viewpoint. Or it's the case that their right brain opened themselves up to a certainty. So please explain the difference between oneness and connectedness, given all this backdrop.
Sure. It's worth my saying that one of the differences between the hemispheres is that the left hemisphere sees things as either or, whereas the right hemisphere sees them as both and we need both either or and both and, not either or both and. So we're not forced to make a decision between these two ways of thinking, but we need them both. And the right hemisphere sees these both. So it sees things as unified, but that their whole nature is differentiation within a nonetheless integral whole, the integrity of which is not threatened by the differentiation within it. So I believe this is a very, very central point. So people say, as you have hinted, oh man, all is one, and I say, yes, and all is many, now what? And, we need both of these positions, because what I believe is going on in the cosmos is that something that was relatively simple and one is unfolding into ever greater complexity that doesn't destroy its wholeness, but spells out the potential that was within that wholeness all along, brings it into being. So the nature of creativity, and that's true of human creativity, but all of nature is creative. And indeed, the cosmos is, I believe, creative in that things are evolving, not just in the living world, but they're evolving in the cosmos too. So all of this process is about the unpacking of what was implicit. So going back to David Bohm's famous concept of the implicate order, it is the making explicate of what was implicate without destroying it. And then that new explicateness is implicit for something else. So the image I like to use is that of a bud unfolding. So the bud unfolds into the full flower. As it does, you can see it separating and individuating into the stamens, the petals, and all the rest. But the bud is not destroyed. It is fulfilled in the making of the flower. And the flower inherits what was in the bud and makes it something new and beautiful beyond what the bud could do. So that's the image, really. So everything needs to be individually differentiated and is heading in the direction of that, but not as a denial of its unified nature, but as a fulfillment of its unified nature. Does that make sense?
Well, if the fulfillment has to do with love, then I can understand it. The reason being that you once explained to me, either on air or off air, and I'll include our previous conversation, which was solo, just you and I, and then, sorry, just you and me. I think that's the correct grammar of it. Just you and me.
Either.
And then there was one with you and John Vervaeke.
Yes.
Anyhow, in one of them you said, look, Curt, in order for you to love something, you have to see it as separate from you. Otherwise, you're just loving yourself. So there is something differentiated about love. It's not just about bringing together and making the same.
Exactly.
In fact, one can view, so this led me on an excursion when reading your book, because many people who are mathematicians and physicists, they're attracted to what they think of as the East. It's actually a Western version of the East. And they take their ideas of what the East may be, which is the East is all about everything being the same and non-dual. There's no such thing as a separation. Everything is one. And it may be the case that we're misinterpreting what the East is saying because we didn't grow up in the East, akin to, I make an analogy of if you were to install, sure, a Windows app works well on Windows and an app for Macs works well there, but you can't just take a Mac app and install it on a Windows machine. You're going to get an error. So if in your bones you grew up and there's implicit knowledge, you've mentioned implicit, there's also tacit knowledge, that is Eastern or that is Western, then it's as if you're ordering from a pizzeria and you think your sample, okay, I want pepperoni, I want some of the East, I want some of the West. And it may not be compatible. But anyhow, I see people who are extremely trained with their left brain readily adopting oneness. And I've had experiences of oneness myself, so I could see myself adopting it. Your book and your thoughts had me consider, these people who proclaim oneness, I wonder, and the ones that I'm speaking about in particular, so their westernized view of the Eastern oneness, I wonder if they think that they're approaching it from the more creative, holistic aspect of the right brain, but it's actually the undifferentiated abstraction of the left brain that they've already strengthened that's allowing them to adopt this and familiarize themselves with it much more quickly. Anyhow, I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. And what gives it away is something you mentioned when you were just beginning this section of the conversation, which is that they become suddenly certain. And I think that when one is certain about these things, one is certainly wrong. I sometimes say there is only one certainty, and that is that anyone who is completely certain is certainly wrong.
Just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Hey, I see you inching away. Don't be like The Economy. Instead, read The Economist. I thought all The Economist was something that CEOs read to stay up to date on world trends. And that's true, but that's not only true. What I found more than useful for myself personally is their coverage of math, physics, philosophy, and AI, especially how something is perceived by other countries and how it may impact markets. For instance, The Economist had an interview with some of the people behind DeepSeek the week DeepSeek was launched. No one else had that. Another example is The Economist has this fantastic article on the recent dark energy data, which surpasses even Scientific American's coverage, in my opinion. They also have the chart of everything. It's like the chart version of this channel. It's something which is a pleasure to scroll through and learn from. Links to all of these will be in the description, of course. Now, The Economist's commitment to rigorous journalism means that you get a clear picture of the world's most significant developments. I am personally interested in the more scientific ones, like this one on extending life via mitochondrial transplants, which creates actually a new field of medicine, something that would make Michael Levin proud. The Economist also covers culture, finance and economics, business, international affairs, Britain, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, China, Asia, the Americas, and of course, the USA. Whether it's the latest in scientific innovation or the shifting landscape of global politics, The Economist provides comprehensive coverage, and it goes far beyond just headlines. Look, if you're passionate about expanding your knowledge and gaining a new understanding, a deeper one of the forces that shape our world, then I highly recommend subscribing to The Economist. I subscribe to them, and it's an investment into your intellectual growth. It's one that you won't regret. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get a special 20% off discount. Now you can enjoy The Economist and all it has to offer for less. Head over to their website, www.economist.com/toe, TOE, to get started. Thanks for tuning in, and now let's get back to the exploration of the mysteries of our universe. Again, that's economist.com/toe.